It's the things that cause us the most grief that actually elevate us to places that we never imagined we'd be. We don't want to go through any grief-related event that we've dealt with. But the reality is, grief is tantamount to growth. Thanks for coming to another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory, the live stream podcast that wants to show the value of repackaging the negative energy and the challenges that you go through so that you can unearth all of your talents and skills and the gifts that you possess, the things that you never knew that were even in you until you went through the struggle. This podcast is going to teach you how to transform your grief into your infinite potential. Now, before I go any further, I just need to be real clear. I'm not a medical doctor. Everything that I'm speaking to you about comes from my personal experience. I don't have a degree in those type of things, but I have a PhD in hard knock life. And I know that you can use your challenges to your advantage because I've done it. Now, get away from that. That was my disclosure. The reality is, understand that you need to go to a therapist or a counselor if you need that kind of assistance. This is just for information, this conversation right here. But today's conversation, it's an important one because it's something that we do often, faking it. Now, you've heard the concept, fake it until you make it, but faking happiness, that right there is the most detrimental thing. I mean, it can cause emotional, mental, even physical problems. As a matter of fact, doctors and psychologists alike, they talk about the fact that when you continue to fake your happiness, you raise your levels, your blood pressure. For instance, Dr. W.T.F, a professor at the University of Frankfurt, he did a study where he used 80 of his students and he created a mock call center. Now, in that call center, what he said to half of his students was to be able to return any type of feelings that came from conversations. So, for instance, if someone was cursing you out over the phone, you were allowed to curse them out back. Then he had the other half that he said, under no circumstances, it doesn't matter what the person on the other end says, you must maintain your composure and you must be as happy as you actually can be. At the end of that experiment, what it showed was that those that returned information to the person on the other end, their blood pressure was fine. The people that had to suppress their feelings and under all circumstances take that challenge of somebody on the other end screaming on them, their blood pressure levels were elevated through the roof. Now, the American Heart Association, it's interesting because there's something that they've called Heart Attack Monday. It's a known fact that most cardiac arrests occur on Monday. You know, you've gone through the weekend and this what's interesting is Sunday night, you have that fear and then anticipation that you have to go back. And you might be in a type of job where you have to fake your happiness. You know, it, it may be a situation where, again, you may work at a call center or you may work around some people who they're constantly happy, whether they're faking it or not, that's irrelevant. But you have to do so because if you give your feelings, then you're being looked at or judged in a certain way. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a fine line in this situation because you can't be the Grinch that stole Christmas 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You just can't. That becomes a whole nother circumstance. So you have to find a way to be authentic, but not not fake your happiness to the point where you're attempting to make everyone else happy at your own detriment. And that happens a lot. Like I said, going back to relationships or your marriages. I mean, I think they say close to 40% of marriages end up in divorce. You got bad breakups. All kinds of things happen. But for years, months, weeks, however long you were in a relationship, you spent some time faking your happiness. And you were doing that with the intention of making the other person happy. Every time you did that, you did it at your own behest. Now, don't get me wrong. If you were genuinely happy, then it was an incredible thing because that's what a love affair, marriage, friendship, that's what it's supposed to be about. Everybody is supposed to be genuine. The minute you tell yourself that I have to do this in order to maintain whatever relationship I was in, that I'm in, you need to reevaluate that relationship. And also, you need to reevaluate yourself. Because, like I said before, you can't be unhappy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you are, you need psychological assistance. You need some therapy, some kind of TLC. But realize something. If you've gotten into a situation where you feel like the only way you can keep the peace is by constantly sacrificing your happiness to make someone else happy. No matter how much you care about the person, no matter how much that job situation is paying you, you need to reevaluate it because nothing is more important than your happiness. You see, your happiness will allow you to find that better version of yourself. to discover things about you that you never knew. And in that discovery, you just may find the person that brings your happiness to life, that brings it into reality. You may discover that job, or you may discover the fact that you wanted to become an entrepreneur, and venturing into entrepreneurialism has given you the happiness that you've always desired. Stop allowing yourself to believe that you should be happy based off of someone else. It's crazy. I read this article and I could not believe what I was reading. But then I started thinking about it and looking at the fact that so many people do this. Psychologists have actually dubbed this experience smiling depression, where you are, when I say faking it till you make it, you are truly faking it. I mean, there are people that look and appear so happy, but reality is it's they are they are putting on an incredible mask. It's the the medical term is called dysmorphia, and it's incredible because it happens all the time. I mean, we've seen it. Look at people who have committed suicide that you had no idea. You were like, whoa, really? When Robin Williams passed away, people knew he had psychological issues, but not to the point where he was killing himself. I mean, the man was adorned by millions. They loved his comedy. They loved his acting ability, loved his philanthropy. Uh, They loved the fact that he was really a brilliant mind. But inside, he was unhappy. And he had to spend so much time faking it to a point where he couldn't do it anymore. That happens a lot. People that we think are so shining and happy and it's amazing that when something happens to them or when they do something to themselves, we're shocked. But honestly, how many times have you woke up and said to yourself, I'm not feeling this today? But then you realize you got something you have to do. Maybe let's take the work situation. Maybe you have something at work where you have to put on that really good face. And you have to force yourself to be happy. Now, in short spurts, this is not problematic. According to psychologists, we can do this in sporadic situations. I mean, you know, hey, sometimes you do have to fake it till you make it. It's when it's on a long-term situation. It's when you make that decision to sacrifice your personal happiness for the happiness for someone else or some other system. That's when you begin to put yourself in jeopardy. I mean, possibly cause yourself physical issues that could result in death, mental issues, emotional issues, where, you know, I think one of the top 10 reasons why people see therapists and counselors and psychologists is because they don't know how to be happy, genuinely happy. They know how to fake it. And in faking it, they're in pain. You should never be in pain and be happy. It, it's an oxymoron, you know? But again, when you are not genuine about your happiness, then it's a problem. It's just like, you know, like, don't get me wrong. It, we've seen it. There are so many gay men and women who are faking their circumstance by not allowing themselves to be the person that they truly want to be. And it costs them. Like, we all see this. Again, and getting away from the whole gay thing. I mean, we had this conversation. I just talked about the fact that some people are in relationships where they literally can't stand the person that they're with. You know, over time, I don't know, something's happened, and the love, the thrill is gone, and it's now been replaced by some form of dislike. And then the bad part about it is, instead of just saying, it's time to go, this is not something that's working out, a person decides to fake it for whatever reason. I mean, maybe they have a personal fear of being judged about being the person that initiates a breakup. Who knows? But what ends up being the problem is the fact that a person sacrifices themselves in order to make another person happy. Now, here's the other bad part about that. See, when you're looking to make someone else happy, that is a constantly moving goalpost. You can't sit up and make someone else happy constantly, because if they need you to validate them for their happiness, then the reality is they're not going to maintain being happy. Their happiness is based upon how you treat them, which means that if one day there's another reason why they need you to validate them, well, the happiness that you gave them the day before, it may not apply. And now you have to morph and figure out what you need to do to make that person happy. And when you have to work incredibly hard to make a person happy all the time, don't get me wrong, you have to work to make somebody happy, but you have to enjoy working to make them happy. When it's a chore, when you're using it to make the other person feel satisfied, you are draining yourself. Put yourself in the situation of understanding that You don't deserve to feel that way. Think about this. Is that other person or is that other situation doing the same thing for you? Because if they're not, then why are you driving on a one-way street? That's, again, it goes back to reevaluating yourself, reevaluating your circumstance. Where are you? Are you in this particular place because you feel that there are mental chains, there are emotional chains that are holding you down, that are keeping you here, forcing you to fake your happiness? Or is there some type of circumstance, you know, like a job? I got to keep this job because I got bills to pay, I got this, I got that. And that's when you have to look at your big picture. You have to ask yourself, are all these things worth my health, my well being? I talked about how the American Heart Association talked about Heart Attack Monday. Uh, so many people run the risk of putting themselves in jeopardy. We see, look at the other side with like the divorce and the bad relationship thing. I mean, things have morphed to a point where you see domestic violence. People are so upset that they're hurting the other person. That is, it is pent up rage and anger. What's interesting is that it started with the desire to make the other person happy. And because you weren't able to, or because the goalpost was being moved constantly, it morphed into frustration, anger, hate. See, that's why I recommend clearly, when you are in that type of situation and when you feel like it's just getting to a point where it's not worth it, it's time to go. Evaluate your happiness. Your reality is that you don't need to be in any circumstance that doesn't make you genuinely happy. Genuine happiness is absolutely different than contrived happiness based off of faking it. Genuine happiness is the most beautiful thing in the world. That's what great relationships are made out of. Great friendships. You know, great when you have a job that you absolutely love, you love going to it. It doesn't feel like work. You know, it's the type of thing that you do for free. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean do it for free. I'm just saying it's you love it that much. That's genuine happiness. On the other side, I mean, like I said, this whole dysmorphia thing, smiling depression, there is an overwhelming amount of the population that owns this form of depression. Think about it. When you listen to this podcast and you shut it off, ask yourself, do I do that? Do I smile when I don't feel like smiling? Am I doing things to make everybody else happy? And in doing that, what is that doing to me? Why do I feel so sad trying to make everyone else happy? It's literally the tears of a clown because you're attempting to make everyone else happy at your own detriment. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that your happiness is not something that should be sacrificed. And you should never fake your happiness. When those times where you're not feeling it, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said though, don't be the everyday person who's disgruntled. That's a problem. But there are times where, hey, you're not feeling it. You don't want to put on a happy face. You don't want to put on a smile. And that's okay. You know, look at your circumstance. If you feel that every day you need to put on these airs in order to feel better about yourself, that's not good. You know, go to my website, jl3motivation.com. What I wanted to do is be able to show you that what you can do is look at the challenges that you've been through and use it as fuel to work to your advantage. And even the difficulties that you've been through, even the times where you faked it, you can actually use it to work to your advantage. It's we can sit down, have a consultation, and figure out the best way that you can use those negative situations to your advantage. I mean, faking your happiness, that is truly a negative situation. And the first thing we would do is discuss what the problem is and figure out how to find genuine happiness through that. And it may be doing a hard thing, having to maybe leave the circumstance, or maybe having to readjust your job situation. And again, those suggestions that we work through. And then look for finding some way to discover how to use those skills to your advantage, how to use the absence of that circumstance as a motivator. You know, I no longer am in that relationship. I'm no longer at that job. Let's figure out how to fill that void. You may find that you'll discover that better version of you by filling that void with something that's genuine to you. Again, opportunities, but the reality is stop faking your happiness. Stop painting a smile on your face when you don't have to. Tell yourself that when I'm not feeling it, it's okay. And understand that your goal should be to create genuine happiness in whatever situation, whatever environment you're in. May it be a personal relationship or friendship, job atmosphere. You need to discover that version of you that you are happy with, truly happy with. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for seeing another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory live stream. I hope that I was able to give you some important information to help you move to a better version of yourself and realize that you deserve it. You don't deserve to have grief treat you like an 800-pound gorilla sitting on your chest. You're better than that. So again, thank you for your time. I'll see you next week with another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory. Have a good one.